忘记还没写的。You and me, you and
Hello, everybody. Welcome to class today. A couple things to start right off. A couple of little business things. First of all, I want to apologize because I feel like you're owed an apology. You know, I want to have these live streams on a consistent basis. But one of the things that you should learn, and we'll turn this into a bit of a teachable moment, that when you get a job, sometimes certain obligations that are related to that job come up and you don't get to do some other things that you might want to do or otherwise need to do for some other parts of your job. So yesterday and the previous Wednesday, 2 Wednesday afternoons in a row, they decided that was a good time to have a mandatory meeting where, you know, all the faculty and had to attend them. So I had to go to those meetings and was unable to live stream. And then today, I got caught in another meeting before this afternoon's live stream, delaying it about 15 minutes. So, you know, I don't like having to do that, and I hate all of this, inconsistency. And I'm really sorry for all of that. And I'm not going to promise it won't happen again, because it might. But, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to roll with the punches and we're going to deal with it as it comes. You know, I'm going to do the best that I can for all of you because, well, that's the best that I can do. Oh, well, that's good news. I'm glad you could hang out with me this afternoon, Lanny. So that's cool. And also in a little bit of news, they just came out a few minutes ago. If you have evening classes today, as this is being shown live, if you're here with me live, if you're watching this recorded, don't try to use this as an excuse later because, well... But if you're having evening classes today when this is live, that's Thursday, February 20th, 2020. The college is closing at 4 o'clock today due to weather conditions. So there will be no evening classes today. So just giving you a heads up, they just announced that through Punch Alert and via social media just a few minutes ago while I was preparing for the live stream. So just to give you all a heads up on that, if you have an evening class today, on the day that this is live, there are no evening classes today. They have been canceled. So for today, I wanted to kind of go through and address some of the questions and some of the different things that I had seen as I was going through, looking at some of your work and various other things from Module 1. And I will also ask you to kind of give me a little bit of leniency in examining your artifacts. These do take me a little longer than a lot of other things to sort of look through and grade because I want to make sure that everything looks good and is appropriate for your portfolios. So while I normally say roughly 7 days, these might take me a little longer to examine. So please give me a little leniency on that. Everything else from Module 1 has already been graded, and you should have some grades and feedback for all of that stuff. But, you know, one of the things that I kind of saw was, you know, some questions around why we do an e-portfolio and kind of what the point is of an e-portfolio and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of want to talk about some e-portfolio related things to get us kicked off today. So, you know, the e-portfolio isn't as obscure as it might seem. I think some of you had some trouble finding an example. And, you know, for some of you, if you tried to find an example, in your area of study, you might have had a little trouble. They are more prevalent in certain disciplines than in other disciplines. In my particular area, when we look at web design and programming, you get a whole lot more portfolios for people in these areas. Just because that's what people want to see. They want to see examples of work to prove skills. And at the end of the day, that's the point of our portfolio, is that we're trying to provide examples of work that prove skills. And it's more than just saying that I did this or I did that, but it's actually having the piece there, or as much of the piece that you're allowed to show. Because actually having that piece and allowing the hiring manager or whomever to see how good that it is, to see just how good your skills are, provides it with that little extra something. You can say, well, I know how to do this. Like I know how to program Java, for example. But if you can provide a program that you created in Java, put the code for a program that you've written on GitHub and link the source code to that to someone as a part of your portfolio, then you're giving it that punch to really prove that you know what you're talking about and back up what you say in your resume. So that's one of the big things there. Now, when we get into things like networking and security, you're not going to see as many of those. And that's because, we're looking at, less project type of things that people kind of, in general, take pride in. Even though they should. Because, in networking, in security, in mission critical, whatever area that you take on, you're having to do these projects. You're having to do things that require a certain knowledge base. You're having to write standard operating procedures. You're having to create recovery plans. You're having to do network diagramming. You're having to create a subnet plan to where you can do some subnet mapping and establish some, networking for a particular area. So it's one thing to say that you have these skills, but it's an entirely other thing to be able to demonstrate these skills. And, granted, in general, the idea of the ePortfolio, it's in the web prefix. This is Web 287. If we were just going by the prefix, this would be just for web students, but we've expanded it out for many different IT and MCO students to be able to take this course. And we did that for this reason, because we know that even if you're not a programmer or even if you're not a web developer, you still have projects and you still have things that you've created that show your skills and demonstrate that you know what you're talking about and that you are as good as you say you are. And the realization is that sets you apart. Think about that for a minute. That sets you apart. Imagine for just a moment, you're a hiring manager and you get given 2 resumes. And on paper, you see these 2 people, and they're almost exactly the same. They have the same certifications, they have, they both have an associate's degree. On paper, they look almost exactly the same. But at the bottom of that resume, one of them has a link to their portfolio and the other one doesn't. And when you go to that portfolio for that one that does, you get to see how good they are, and you get to see how much they've excelled and how much they know before ever interviewing them, before ever talking to them. You can take that resume and put it right on the top of the pile. That's why we want you all to create these portfolios. We want you to demonstrate your skills, and we want you to pick out your best artifacts. That's why I say 5 to 10. I'd rather you have fewer than a ton of artifacts. Like if I had my choice between 5 and 10, I'd say err toward 5. Like you want enough that you can prove that you know what you're doing, but you want the ones that you have to be the absolute best of the best, the cream of the crop. Because the more that you add to that portfolio, the more likely that you are to have a real stinker thrown in there. And you don't want that bad portfolio item to drag down the rest of your good portfolio. You want nothing but the best high quality items, artifacts in your portfolio. You want to put your best foot forward. Remember that you get to show who you are to these hiring managers. You get to decide what information that you tell them. You get the options to tell them things and to leave things out. Some things you'll want to save for the interview. Some things you never have to bring up. Some things they can find out on their own through various other means. But the way that you present yourself, you're in charge of that. You dictate your own narrative. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. You're putting out your best examples of your own work, so that when people see this portfolio, they take your resume, put it to the top of the pile, because they want to talk to you first, because you stand apart from everybody else. On paper, a lot of people can look the same. In a resume, a lot of people can look the same. Especially people who, are just coming into this for the very first time. Students who have just, graduated high school a couple years ago and went through a 2-year associate's degree program. A lot of them can look exactly the same. You want something that sets you apart from everyone else. And that's what this portfolio can do for you, and that's why we do it. And I have this workplace search results pulled up here to show you that it's not as uncommon as you might think. Now, again, granted, a lot of these are web developer and programmer and web designer questions. But when you look through these, we have 33 pages of questions just about portfolios. And you can see the second one here, a science job, requesting a portfolio, not a resume. So it's more than just programming and web development, even though that's a lot of it. So why do we want you to do this? Why is it important that you have this e-portfolio? Is it that big of a deal? It very much can be. It can be the thing that sets you apart from your competition. And when it comes to whether or not you get the job, you want every advantage that you can get over your competition. That's super important. And that's the kind of care and thought that I'd like for you to kind of put into this. Because it can be the thing that is the difference between getting you a job and the next person getting a job. So consider it highly. And so that's one of the things that I want to talk about today. And again, you're welcome to email me with your questions or ask your questions in chat if you're here with me live. Whatever you'd like to do. If you have a question that you think of as you're watching this later and you think, that might be good for a future live stream, go ahead and send it to me in an email. Sorry, I got sidetracked by the question coming in here. On the artifacts topic, if most of them are papers, should at least one of them be 5 or more or 10 or more pages? Should we demonstrate that we can write papers of varying lengths? I would say that that's not as important. I would say that the quality of communication is better than the quantity of communication. So I would lean toward the idea of the topics being more important. Yes. So if you can better discuss the idea of certain topics, then absolutely. But papers are good to use for artifacts. If anybody out there was thinking about that, because when you think about cybersecurity and system administration and networking and all of that sort of thing, you're going to have to write reports. And showing that you can write and that you can communicate is a good thing. That's going to be a good thing that you can do. So in terms of like networking and MCO and cybersecurity, papers can work out in your favor as artifacts. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about the links of the paper so much as I would worry about the topic and how well I wrote about the topic. So as far as that goes, that's what I would look at with that. Quality over quantity. But yeah, that's great. That's the kind of thing that that's the kind of question that I'd like to get. Because I'm sure there might be someone else out there thinking something similar or have a tangential question about including papers as an artifact. And now we've kind of approached all of those questions for everybody out there. So that's good. But I'd also like to take some time briefly and talk about the job application assignments. I've seen so far some good job application choices. Some of you are really trying to, apply for some good jobs out there. We're in the resume module now. But the resume module isn't complete for another couple weeks. So if you want to go ahead and send me your resume a little early, you can feel free to do that. Question coming in. Is it more important to try to demonstrate different types of writing styles if possible, like technical versus report writing? That's going to depend on the area in which you're trying to get a job. For most areas, technical writing in general is going to be more valued, just because most things are technical writing, but report writing can also have benefits. Or I'm I'm construing report writing as essay writing here, but if you mean like reports, like business reports, then a good mix of both of those would work. But business reports also qualify as technical writing, so that's a type of technical writing. Because, I essentially remember the fact that technical writing is just writing from an area of expertise. So ideally, there's a lot of stuff that can apply to technical writing. But looking at report writing as essay writing, I would err more toward technical writing, just because it would have more value to a hiring manager. And remember that that's the key thing that they want to see is what you bring to the table and what you can give to them. So there's that. So I'm going to turn that back around and say, does that make sense? Cool, thank you. So let's talk about these job application assignments just a little more. And then we'll go ahead and wrap it up for the day. So I've seen a lot of good stuff so far come out of the job application assignments. You all are doing really well with those. I'm really happy with how you've taken to them so far. And I hope you're taking them as I intended. There's a couple things that I wanted you all to get out of those. One is to just get comfortable with the process. And, that means like getting out of your comfort zone, practicing, going through the motions, discovering the differences, which I think a lot of you are really picking up on. When I go through and read the worksheets every week, that's one thing that I see a lot in the reflection portion of the worksheets is, people remarking about how different application processes are, about how some of them are really short and some of them are really long. And, that's right. Some things, you can just click a button and it kind of imports all your information through a different API, and you include your resume and you're good to go. And then some things you have to fill out a bunch of stuff and include a bunch of information. And I'm going to say, not to shy away from those longer ones. Obviously, if it's a longer job application, it's going to take more time to do. But, if you're on the job hunt, you're wanting a job, taking an hour or even 2 hours to fill out a job application could, at the end of the day, mean the difference between getting a job and not getting a job. So there's that, There's also the fact that, again, you kind of get to decide what you put in there. So unless it's a required field, which, some of them have a lot of required fields, and that's one thing. You can decide what you put in and what you don't put in. You can omit some information. You don't have to put everything in, unless it physically won't let you submit the application without something in there. And then again, you get to decide what you put in there. So you're seeing these differences between the job application process. You're starting to realize the expectations. You're getting accustomed to it. That's one of the big things that I wanted you to see. Another thing that I wanted you to get out of it is something that you're going to be getting out of it as you progress through the semester. That's why we're writing reflections and doing all that sort of stuff. Because as you progress and as you learn more and as you make things better, like hopefully you'll have a better resume by the end of the resume module. And hopefully by the end of a few of these talks, you'll have a better understanding of what people are expecting. And by the end of after applying for a few jobs, you'll have a better understanding of what to look for. And you're gaining this knowledge and you're gaining this experience and you're accommodating your worldview with this new knowledge as you progress. So as you go through week after week after week after week, I hope you see your outlook on the job market and the application process and how you do things and for what reasons that you do things. I hope you see those change. And also, especially for those of you who are looking for jobs right now, I hope you get jobs. Like if you could graduate in May with a job and hit the ground running, that would be great. That would be the best thing, right? Like, you go ahead and you graduate. Or even if you could go ahead and get a job now on the auspices that you'll graduate in May. And work toward that. That would be good. That would be the best. Right? Like that's what that's what a lot of people want. When I started this thing, I said we all had different goals and our goals look different for every person. And that's not changed, right? Like we all still have different goals. And what your goals are might be different from what someone else's in the class, what their goals are. But for those of you who, when you answered that survey at the start of the semester, for those of you who said you were actively looking for work, actively looking for a job, I can assume that you have one goal there. And success in that goal, I can assume what that looks like, i.e. getting a job. So I want you all to take these job application assignments seriously, and so far it seems like you are. So that's good. Because even if you're not looking for a job actively, and at the end of the day, like you might get offered a job and you have to politely turn it down, you still got provided with some good experience in the job application process. You still learned some new stuff about how you apply for a job and how you do those sorts of things. You made your resume better. You learned more about how to apply better. You did all of this stuff. And there might come a point in the future where you'll need all that information. And when that time comes, it's good to have. So I wanted to say again, don't balk at those long application processes, especially if it's a job that you think you might really like and might be a really good fit for you. If it's a job that you think would be good for you, it's something that you should want to apply for and want to do. And even still, like, the differences between job applications, it shows you how different things go and kind of what you should prepare yourself for and get ready for when you're applying for jobs and all that sort of fun stuff. So there we go. It's been about a half an hour. So I want to go ahead and stop here, and I've gotten everything out really that I wanted to get out. So there's that. If anybody else, if anybody who's live with me has any more questions, I'd be glad to answer them. So if anybody who's live with me has any questions, you can throw those in chat. We'll wait a few seconds for the delay to catch up here. Otherwise, here in a minute, I'll turn the music back on. We'll hang out and chat for a minute just to make sure nobody has any other questions. But then, barring all of that, that's all I've got for you. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time. It is tough to get to have the time for one of those long job applications sometimes. But if it's a job that you really want and you really think that you might be good for, then it'd probably be in your best interest to make time. Yeah, you could bookmark it, apply for it a different time. When you have a little more time. But you still want to try to be, especially when you're in the active process of looking for a job, you want to try to keep applying for jobs. That's another one of the reasons why I'm trying to kind of keep you all like doing one a week. One of the things that you want to do when you're looking is you want to kind of be hitting the pavement, and you want to be out there, and you want to be, throwing your resume around and trying to find stuff. Right? So, like, if you get off the beaten path and, you just kind of start, like, putting things off, you tend not to come back to them. So, it's a good thing to kind of set yourself up a regimented schedule and when you're looking and when you're actively doing things, and do 1 or 2 or more job applications a week. Set yourself a goal and say, I'm going to send in 1 job application a week, or I'm going to send in 2 job applications a week, 3, 4, however many job applications a week while you're looking, and then stick to that goal by the end of the week. So really, like, the goal that I've set for you all with 1 a week is relatively low for what you would expect if you were really kind of desperate and looking for a job because you needed to make money, right? Like if you needed a job to make money because you're graduating college soon or whatever, like a lot of you are, then you want to amp that up and do 2, 3, 4 a week. Because there'll come a point where, you're not in college anymore and you've graduated, and then, well, what do you do now, right? So having a good, regimented goal and a set schedule helps you maintain and keep doing what you need to do. So you want to still try to do at least 1 a week. But if one's exceptionally long and you don't really have a whole lot of time for it, but you think it'd be a good fit, you can bookmark it and come back to it maybe when you have a little more time. You just want to make sure that you come back to it. But you still want to you want to try to find another one to do in its stead. Cool? So I'm going to go ahead and turn the music back on. I'll hang out in the chat for just a minute, just in case anybody has any other questions. But that's all I've got for you today. Also, feel free to send me some in email if you've got some for email. That's all I have for you today, and we'll talk to you next time.